Vanderbilt might have just pulled off upset of the year. On a random Saturday night in early October, the Commodores go out and do the impossible, unthinkable, unimaginable, and dethrone #1 ranked Alabama. An absolute super team. Take a look at their roster. You've got NFL-ready guys left and right. A Heisman candidate as your quarterback in Jalen Milroe, who's been having a fantastic season, and one of, if not the greatest receiver to ever step on a football field, and he's only 17, if we haven't heard that enough already. I mean, at the end of the day, we are talking about a top 10 greatest upset of all time here. That is what just happened in Vanderbilt. Unbelievable, really. And it was all thanks to head coach Clark Lee and their quarterback, Diego Pavia. The reason I'm making this video, yes, I watched the game and all the other upsets that happened around college football, but the reason that this team is getting a video is because of one man, Diego Pavia. He's electric on the field and off of it. If you watch that post-game press conference that he did right after beating Alabama, absolutely electric. This guy's got a great personality and he's an amazing football player. So of course he's gonna get a video on him. I mean, we've got to take a deeper dive into who Diego is, because honestly, he's come out of absolute nowhere, and yet he's been around this entire time. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. I mean, he's been at New Mexico State for the last 2 years, and he basically helped turn around that program along with his offensive coordinator, who also made the trip from New Mexico State to Vanderbilt with him. So that might be the reason he even got the job in Vandy, but hell, he deserves everything he's gotten, because the way he's been playing since, coming out of high school, going to a JUCO for 2 years before transferring in-state to New Mexico State and then balling out there. I mean, there's a reason this guy is in the SEC, because there is no quit in him. Only fight, and we saw that in the game against Alabama. He put on an absolute clinic, and he's been doing it for almost a whole year at this point. I mean, the way that Diego Pavia plays football in this Vanderbilt system is one of a kind. He's not gonna sling the ball 50, 60 attempts per game and get 300 plus passing yards, but what he will do is command this offense and make it down the field in 9 to 10 minutes at a time. And at the end of the day, Vanderbilt is gonna end up in the end zone. That's just the kind of ball that Vanderbilt plays with Diego Pavia as their quarterback. I mean, so far on the season, 721 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, and those were just in the first 4 games. That's not even including the stats that he had against Alabama. And in those games, did Vanderbilt go 2-2? Yeah, okay, but with this win against the #1 ranked team, they should be soaring up the charts. I know they are in the SEC. Who knows if they climb into the top 25? Okay, maybe not yet. We may not be seeing them ranked quite yet, but we will be soon, especially if they can ride this momentum for the rest of the season, which I do see as a real possibility here. I mean, when you go out and beat a #1 ranked team like Alabama and do it while being unranked yourself, has to be a huge boost of confidence, not only for the head coach and the players, but the program as a whole. From their training staff to the janitors, everybody is more excited to watch Vanderbilt football. If you saw the fans in the crowd in that game, 80% were Alabama fans. Literally just a small strip in the corner. And that's Vanderbilt fans, and it was a home game. In fact, that strip of fans was mostly just students. But after Vanderbilt put on an absolute masterclass on prime time, those fans are going to be rushing to get seats next week, the week after, for every home game for the rest of the year. That stadium is going to be packed, especially if Vanderbilt can ride this thing out. If Diego Pavia can keep making national headlines week after week after week. You may not think of them as a football school. You may think Vanderbilt, oh, baseball, right? Well, if I'm right about Diego Pavia and Clark Lee, they're gonna go out and single-handedly change your minds on the idea of what you thought Vanderbilt football was, okay? It's gonna be reshaped, reimagined, and they're gonna be at the top of the SEC. And we'll talk more about it in a second, but for right now, I just wanted to slow down, remind you guys to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 5,000. I feel like we can get there any day now. All right, much appreciated. Let's get back into the video. You see, Diego Pavia's game has been on the rise, and like I mentioned earlier, he has been playing for New Mexico State for the last 2 years. In his first season with New Mexico State, well, they were an independent school, but they had about 7 wins and 6 losses, I want to say, and he was able to throw for 13 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 1,400 yards in the 12 games that he played, and his completion percentage sat at about 53. There was some room for improvement, but you got to remember, this guy was coming straight from a JUCO, okay? And then, after that season with New Mexico State, he gets more comfortable in the system, and we're looking at New Mexico's first year in Conference USA. All of a sudden, they've been moved up. They've left the independent stage that they've been in for the last few years, and they're in no real conference. And what happens? They go out and win 10 games, like the second time in program history, all thanks to Diego Pavia and what the culture was in New Mexico State. I mean, Diego Pavia had 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 2,973 yards on a 60.4 completion percentage. He played so good that he won Conference USA Player of the Year. He won that award, and apparently, some real scouts took notice. One of his offensive coordinators going to Vanderbilt probably helped, and he landed a job in the SEC. Yes, a job, because, these guys get paid now. I'm sure he made a bag while transferring to Vanderbilt, and now he's making national headlines. I could easily see this guy in a preseason game come next August, right? And if he manages to excite the fans the way he did for Vanderbilt, who knows? Who knows how far he can take his career? I mean, I'm sure his doubters and haters believe that he couldn't make it to the SEC, that he couldn't make it to an FBS school, and time again, Diego Pavia has gone out and proved just about everybody wrong, really. But enough about the past. Let's get to the present. Let's talk about the game I've been hyping up this entire video. You see, to kick it off, Vanderbilt gets the ball, and they hold that ball for a good 6 minutes. This is something that Vanderbilt did very well, especially in the first half, and that was get this ball and hold on to it for a very long time. It kept that electric Alabama offense at bay for a majority of the first half. And what do they do with the ball? Methodically drive down the entire length of the field and score a touchdown. And it also helped that on the next drive, Jalen Milroe goes out and throws a pick 6, giving Vanderbilt an early, strong, and commanding lead. That 13-0 lead was very important for the rest of this game. Now, of course, Alabama's offense would finally get a hold of that ball and, do some scoring of their own, getting their own touchdown. And then came the most important drive in the entirety of the game. I mean, all of a sudden, it's 13-7, and the momentum's starting to shift in Alabama's favor. If Vanderbilt doesn't answer back here, then we could easily see Alabama take the lead and not give it back. But thanks to Cedric Alexander and Stowers and Pavia, along with a lot of mistakes on Alabama's defense and special teams, Vanderbilt goes out and scores their 3rd touchdown of the game to make it 20-7. And after that, I don't want to say it was smooth sailing, but that Vanderbilt upset looked like a more realistic possibility. Now, after that drive, there was a little more scoring from both sides, and they ended up going into halftime with Vanderbilt leading by 9, 23-14. And that was huge for a Vanderbilt school who hadn't beat a #1 ranked team ever in their history at this point. Now, Alabama would absolutely try and get a hold of this game right after the second half as they came out strong, went down the length of the field, and scored. And then after 2 failed drives by both squads, Vanderbilt ended up with the ball again, and they got into a situation where they were in 4th and 1. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, they ran the play, got a first down on like a QB sneak, but Alabama had called a timeout, so they had to redo it. And instead of running the ball again, which everybody expected, I mean, they'd been doing that all night, they called for a little misdirection. Diego Pavia ends up throwing an absolute bomb to Junior Sherrill for 36 yards. Now, Sherrill had dropped a really important ball a few plays earlier in a different drive, and for him to catch this one was huge, not only for his morale, but for the rest of the teams, because it stopped Alabama from creeping back into this game completely, which they had been doing all night. Alabama had gotten closer and closer to making a comeback, but every time they got even just a little closer, Vanderbilt would go out and score again. And that touchdown made it a 30-21 lead over Alabama, and we're looking about halfway in the third quarter at this point. And after that, of course, Alabama would score a touchdown of their own, and Vanderbilt would get a field goal. And all of a sudden, we have a game where it's 28-33 in Vanderbilt's favor. And when hope looks lost for this Vanderbilt team, because you never know what Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams is going to do. Ryan Williams had himself a great game. Jalen Milroe goes out and fumbles the ball. And what does Vanderbilt do with that mistake? They capitalize on it as they score a touchdown right after Jalen Milroe fumbles the ball. The reason Vanderbilt won tonight is because they capitalized on nearly every opportunity given to them, and then they doubled down. That's exactly what happened here. That's why Vanderbilt pulled off the biggest upset of all time. I'm gonna say it was probably the biggest upset of all time if we're being real. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that things got a bit scary for Vanderbilt towards the end. But of course, Vandy pulled through and ended up winning 40-35. But anyway, I think I've said everything I've wanted to in this video, covered just about everything that I had in mind. I mean, the game, Diego Pavia, Clark Lee. So we'll call it quits here, all right? Catch y'all later. Much love. Deuces.